I didn't stumble into this moment. I fought for it. For years, I worked late, said no to dinners out, picked up side jobs just to keep the dream alive. While other people were upgrading their phones or taking vacations, I was saving every penny. And now, seeing my name on that mortgage document, it felt like finally breathing after years underwater. This house wasn't just a structure. It was every sacrifice wrapped in drywall and painted with hope. I chose every corner, every curtain. And tonight, I got to fill it with laughter. The party felt like something out of someone else's life. Someone lucky, someone who didn't carry the kind of weight I did. But it was mine. Friends walked through the door holding flowers and wine, smiling wide, hugging me like they'd waited years for this too. I watched them snap pictures against the wall I painted myself. Every candle I lit, every playlist I made, it all said, "You made it." Someone gave a toast, and when they said my name, I almost cried. Not because of what they said, but because I finally believed it. Standing in the middle of that room, music low and glasses clinking, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. This wasn't just a housewarming, it was a rebirth. I thought back to the nights I ate instant noodles, to the mornings I walked to work in the rain because Uber wasn't in the budget. None of that was wasted. It all built this. These walls, this light, this moment. I didn't just buy a house, I built something I could finally call my own. Every detail in this place had a story. That rug in the living room? I bought it after saving up tips for 2 months. The dishes? A mismatched set I picked out one at a time during sales. It wasn't just about style, it was about meaning. I wanted people to walk in and feel what this house meant to me. Not just comfort, but purpose. Not just beauty, but a kind of silent strength in every little choice. This wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about honoring everything I'd been through to get here. People kept asking me, "How did you do it?" And I'd smile. But inside, I was remembering things they never saw, like the nights I cried in my car after work, too proud to let anyone know I was struggling, or the time my debit card got declined in a grocery line and I had to pretend I forgot my wallet. I didn't have parents to bail me out, or a partner to split the weight, just me. And somewhere along the way, I became enough. That realization, that I made this, it was louder than any applause. There's something sacred about claiming a space that's truly yours. I don't just mean financially, I mean emotionally, spiritually. This house was the first time in my life I didn't feel like I was renting a version of someone else's dream. This was mine. The creaky floorboard near the kitchen? Mine. The sunlight that poured through the window at 8 a.m. and lit up my coffee table? Mine. And maybe that sounds small to someone else, but to me, it was everything. I had carved out a corner of the world, and I finally belonged in it. I remember standing by the window that evening, holding a glass of wine, just watching everyone enjoy themselves. There was laughter coming from the backyard. Someone had put on music, and the house felt alive. For once, I wasn't trying to survive a moment. I was living in it. That feeling of arrival, of being exactly where you're meant to be, it doesn't come often. But that night, it wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I looked at the faces around me, people who'd seen me fight for this, and I finally let myself breathe. There were moments when I thought I'd never get here, times I felt behind, like life was handing out blessings and skipped my name. But building this house wasn't just about shelter. It was about reclaiming a sense of worth I'd almost lost. I poured so much of myself into these walls, not just money, but hope. Maybe that's why I was glowing that night. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had made something that no one could take away from me. I had earned this peace, piece by piece. As the night stretched on, I stepped away from the crowd for a minute and just stood at the doorway, looking in. I smiled. Not for the camera or the guests, but for myself. I had crossed a finish line no one else could see, but I felt it deep in my bones. And even then, even in all that happiness, I had no idea what was waiting for me just around the corner. What words were about to be spoken? What would be taken from that night, not with force, but with something colder? I should have known something was off when I saw them whispering near the hallway. My parents, standing apart from everyone else, not smiling, not drinking, not even pretending. My father caught my eye and gave me that look, the one that used to mean I was in trouble as a kid. So when he called me over with a slight nod, I didn't think much of it at first. I figured maybe they wanted to say something in private, something sweet, maybe even proud. I couldn't have been more wrong. We stepped into the quiet of the guest room, the only one without music or chatter bleeding through the walls. And that's when he said it. Cold, flat, no room for misunderstanding. "Why are you throwing a party in our house?" I blinked. I thought I'd misheard. Our house? My mouth opened, but no words came out. I felt like I'd been slapped without being touched. My heart started racing, and I remember staring at him, searching his face for some hint of a joke. But he wasn't joking. Neither was she. My mom stepped in, her voice lower but sharper. "We raised you, didn't we? We gave you everything, values, guidance, support. This house isn't just yours. You owe us more than a thank you." That's when the floor beneath me, the very one I'd paid for, felt like it cracked open. I couldn't even process the layers of it. Was this about money? About control? About some invisible debt they'd been tallying all my life? I felt like the party was still happening outside, but I was suddenly somewhere else, somewhere colder. I stood there, frozen, like my body hadn't caught up to my brain yet. "What are you saying?" I finally asked, but my voice came out smaller than I wanted. My father crossed his arms and gave that disappointed sigh, the one I used to get when I brought home a B instead of an A. "Don't act surprised," he said. "You didn't get here alone. We fed you, clothed you, raised you. This success? You think it's just yours?" I could feel my stomach twist, like something warm had turned to ice inside me. I didn't know what to defend first, my pride or my past. I tried to stay calm. "You helped raise me, yes, but that's what parents do." My mom shook her head slowly, like I was the ungrateful one. "No, Sophie. We gave you a head start. You just built on what we gave you." And that's when I realized they didn't see this house as my win. They saw it as their return on investment, as if my whole life had been a loan I didn't know I took. That night was supposed to be about joy, about pride, but now it was being rewritten into a debt I never signed up for. And the worst part? I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to scream, to ask why they'd come at all if this is how they felt. Another part wanted to cry, to plead with them not to ruin this for me. But instead, I just stood there, replaying years of subtle guilt trips, comments masked as concern, love tangled in expectation. In their eyes, I didn't just owe them respect, I owed them ownership of my work, my peace, my name on the deed. And as they left the room, I felt something shift. I didn't go back to the party right away. I just stood there, staring at the floor, trying to steady my breath. Outside that room, people were laughing, raising glasses, complimenting the curtains. But inside me, something had cracked. It's strange how a single sentence, just a few words, can undo years of work. Not the physical work, no. The emotional work, the rebuilding of confidence, the stitching together of a self-worth I fought to claim. In a blink, it all felt questioned, like they were trying to rewrite my story just as it was finally beginning. Eventually, I walked back out, smiled, nodded, played the part, but inside, I was somewhere else entirely. My parents stayed a little longer, hovering in the background, sipping drinks like nothing had happened. I watched them like strangers, And every compliment I got that night, every "I'm so proud of you" or "you did this," echoed against what I'd just heard. They didn't congratulate me, they claimed me, like I was still a child being told to say thank you for a gift she bought with her own allowance. Later, lying in bed, still in my dress, I stared at the ceiling and replayed it all again. Not just tonight, but every moment they ever reminded me of what I owed them. The college tuition they never paid, the support they dangled like a prize, the way love always seemed tied to obedience. And suddenly, the walls of this house, my house, didn't feel safe. They felt claimed, branded, as if their words had painted themselves across every surface. And the worst part? I didn't know how to wash them off. The next morning, the silence in the house felt louder. No clinking glasses, no music, no voices, just me and the echo of their words. I made coffee like I always did, but even the smell felt off, like it didn't belong in a place so newly tainted. I kept asking myself if I had overreacted. Maybe they didn't mean it like that. Maybe I misunderstood. But the truth kept rising through the excuses I tried to make for them. I didn't imagine their tone. I didn't imagine their claim. That wasn't love. That was ownership disguised as parenting. I sat at the kitchen table and tried to remember every sentence they said. This house isn't just yours. You owe us more than a thank you. The more I repeated their voices in my head, the more it stung. I hadn't built this house from spite. I built it from grit. But now they were trying to rewrite the blueprint, to say they'd poured the foundation. I knew they'd supported me in ways, but not in this. Not in the down payments, not in the sleepless nights, not in the years I went without so I could have this one win. This was mine, but they made me doubt that. I wanted to talk to someone, a friend, maybe. But I didn't. I didn't want to see the look of pity in their eyes, or worse, that awkward silence people give when they don't know what to say. So I sat alone, wrapped in a blanket that didn't feel comforting anymore. And I thought about every moment in my childhood where help came with conditions, the guilt trips, the unspoken debts. It all came flooding back, like the storm I thought I'd already weathered. But this wasn't thunder. This was something quieter, and somehow crueler. That whole day, I moved around the house like I was walking through fog. I watered the plants, wiped the counters, adjusted a picture frame that didn't need fixing. Anything to feel in control again. But every object felt heavier, like it carried a hidden message now. Was that couch just furniture, or was it something they'd someday claim too? I found myself looking at receipts, digging up loan papers, reminding myself I did this. Alone. I shouldn't have needed proof, but somehow I did. Their words had made me question my own truth, and I hated that. I hated how easily their voices slipped into my head, like they had a key to my confidence. All those years I spent trying to please them, get the grades, follow the rules, be the daughter who didn't cause trouble. And yet none of it was enough, because in the end, they didn't want me to be independent. They wanted me to be grateful, submissive, small. I could still hear my mom saying, "You just think you did all this alone." Like my success was a fluke they allowed to happen, not a result I earned. I started remembering little moments, things I hadn't thought about in years. Like the time I got accepted into college and they barely reacted because it wasn't the school they wanted. Or how they'd offer help, then hold it over me like a leash. I used to think it was normal. I used to think I was the problem. Too sensitive, too proud, too selfish. But now, in my own house, the one place that was supposed to be mine, I finally saw it for what it was. Not love, not support, it was control. And I was done giving them that power. That night, I sat on the floor of the guest room, the same room they pulled me into, and I stared at the spot where they'd stood. The air still felt heavy there, like their words had soaked into the walls. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the pain was too still, too cold. It wasn't like a wound. It was more like a shadow that followed me from room to room. I'd worked so hard for this place, not just to live in it, but to feel safe in it. And now, I didn't even know if I could trust its silence. It's strange how quickly joy can turn into grief. One moment you're surrounded by love and light, the next, you're questioning everything. Was the pride I felt misplaced? Was I naive to think I'd finally outrun the weight of their expectations? I thought I had closed that chapter, that being grown meant I'd earned peace. But that night taught me something else. Sometimes, people don't want to see you free. They want to see you grateful, endlessly, quietly grateful, especially if they think your success reflects on them. I ended up falling asleep there, on the floor, wrapped in an old throw blanket, like I was trying to shrink myself back into someone they'd approve of. But somewhere deep in my chest, a flicker of resistance was growing. I wasn't that little girl anymore. I wasn't someone they could guilt into silence. And even if I didn't know what to say to them yet, I knew this much. This house was mine. My name was on the title. My hands painted these walls, and if they wanted a piece of it, they were going to have to face something they never expected. A few days passed before I made the call. I didn't rush it. I needed time to sit with the ache, to let the anger settle into clarity. When I finally picked up the phone and invited them back, it wasn't out of hope for reconciliation. It was for me, for my own peace. I wanted them to look me in the eye while I said what I should have said that night. Not out of rage, but from a place of knowing. They'd shaken something in me, but they also woke something up, something stronger than their guilt. When they arrived, I didn't offer coffee. I didn't offer small talk. I led them straight to the kitchen table and laid out the documents. My loan approval, the down payment receipt, the deed, my name, and mine alone. Every paper told the truth they refused to hear. This house was built without their money, without their signatures, without their say. My father shifted in his seat, like the chair was too hard. My mother's eyes scanned the papers, then flicked back to me, like she was searching for the part that proved her right. I took a breath, steady and full. "You gave me life," I said. "But I built this. I built it with sleepless nights and second jobs and believing in myself when no one else did." I could feel my voice tremble, but I didn't let it break. "This house isn't your reward. It's my recovery." They didn't speak, not right away, and I didn't fill the silence, because I wasn't asking for understanding anymore. I was drawing a line, and this time, it was mine to draw. They finally spoke, but it wasn't an apology. My father muttered something about respect, and my mother said I was being dramatic. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at them and said the words I'd carried for years, words I didn't even know I had the right to say until now. You don't get to weaponize love. You don't get to rewrite history to make yourself the hero in my story. And just like that, I felt it. The power of saying no without shouting. The power of choosing myself without needing their permission. I reached into a drawer and handed them a letter I'd written the night before. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't angry. It was clear. I told them they were not welcome in my home until they could respect my boundaries. Not just tolerate them, respect them. No backhanded comments, no quiet guilt, no passive-aggressive reminders of who raised me. If they wanted to be part of my life, it had to be on new terms. Terms that honored who I'd become, not who they expected me to stay. And for once, I didn't second-guess myself as I spoke. They didn't take it well. I didn't expect them to. My mother stood up first, hurt flashing in her eyes like I'd betrayed her. My father followed, slower, quieter. I walked them to the door, not as a daughter desperate to fix things, but as a woman finally protecting her peace. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just opened the door and let the silence speak for me. They left without saying goodbye. And for the first time in my life, I didn't chase after their approval. I closed the door and stood there, hand on the lock, heart steady. I didn't slam the door. I just turned the lock and stood there for a moment, letting the quiet settle around me. It wasn't a moment of triumph. It was a moment of peace, hard-earned, raw, and real. I walked back through the house slowly, like I was reclaiming every step. This was my space, mine, and even though nothing had changed physically, everything felt different. The walls didn't feel like battlegrounds anymore. They felt like boundaries. And for the first time, they were holding me, not anyone else's expectations. I sat down on the same couch I'd once doubted, the one I thought they'd stained with their entitlement. But now it felt like a seat of truth. I thought about how often I'd shrunk myself to keep the peace, bit my tongue, smiled through the discomfort. I didn't owe them more chances. I didn't owe them comfort at my expense. I had drawn a line, not to push them away, but to protect the life I'd worked so hard to build. And I knew that if I ever let them back in, it would be through a door they no longer controlled. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. No racing thoughts, no guilt gnawing at my ribs, no pretending. Just me, wrapped in a silence that finally felt safe. I didn't know what would happen next, if they'd call, if they'd stay away, if they'd try to twist the story into something else. But that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I had chosen myself, fully, unapologetically. And though I hadn't planned it this way, I knew now. Sometimes the foundation isn't what you build under you. It's what you refuse to let anyone else build for you. I started small. A vase here, a frame there, little things I hadn't noticed before that still carried their weight. Gifts they gave me out of love that always came with a string attached. I boxed them up one by one, not out of anger, but as a quiet declaration. I was making space. Space for who I was becoming. Space for peace that didn't have a price tag. The house felt lighter with every drawer I cleared, like it was exhaling with me, finally breathing free after holding in too much for too long. I repainted the guest room first, the same one they'd turned into a courtroom during the party. The new color was soft and clean, a shade I chose without second-guessing. I bought new curtains, ones that caught the morning light just right, and a rug that made the whole room feel warm. It wasn't about decorating. It was about reclaiming. Every nail I hammered, every pillow I fluffed, was a reminder that I had the final say here. This home didn't just reflect me, it protected me. And every change I made deepened that truth. Months passed, and the air inside felt different, calmer, kinder. I started smiling more, real smiles, not the ones I wore like armor. I hosted another gathering, but this time the guest list was different. No one who made me feel like I had to earn my place. Just laughter, music, and people who saw me without measuring me. I lit candles, played records, and raised a glass not to prove a point, but to celebrate the quiet, hard beauty of choosing yourself. For the first time, the house didn't just look like home. It felt like it. I thought maybe that was the end of it. That they'd stay silent, stew in their pride, maybe let time do what apologies never could. But deep down, I knew better. Some people don't let go. Not of control, not of the version of you they think they own. So when I saw their names on my phone the morning of the party, I wasn't shocked. Missed calls, a message that read, "We're coming." No apology, no acknowledgement, just a declaration, as if they still believed they could walk through the door like nothing had happened. I didn't panic, I didn't scramble, I just closed the gate, literally. I locked it and stood there, waiting, heart steady. When their car pulled up, I walked out to meet them before they had the chance to step out. My mom rolled down the window, trying to smile like this was normal. My father looked straight ahead like he was above the moment. "We just want to see the house," she said. I shook my head once, slowly. "This isn't your house," I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. Truth doesn't ask permission. For a second, they looked stunned, like I'd broken some unspoken rule. Maybe I had. Maybe I was supposed to cave, to let them back in and keep the peace. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I didn't need their approval to feel whole. I didn't need their presence to validate my life. I stepped back from the car, gave one last look, and turned away without another word. I heard the engine start. No goodbye. No explosion. Just a slow, quiet retreat, the kind that finally felt like closure. When I walked back inside, the party was still humming. Soft music, warm light, friends laughing in the kitchen. No one knew what had just happened outside, and I didn't need to tell them. That moment wasn't for anyone else. It was for me. A line drawn, a weight dropped. I poured myself a glass of wine, took a breath that felt cleaner than anything I'd breathed in months, and joined the people who had shown up not out of obligation, but love. Real love. The kind that asks nothing and gives everything. The next morning, I stood barefoot in the living room, coffee in hand, and looked around the space I'd reclaimed. Every inch of it now told my story, not theirs. The photos on the shelves showed smiles untouched by guilt. The pillows were soft, not because they were expensive, but because they were chosen with joy. Even the silence had changed. It no longer echoed with past voices. It cradled me, reminded me that healing doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it comes with absence, and that too is a kind of love. They built the past. Yes, I won't erase that, but I built the future. And every nail, every choice, every no I dared to say. It belongs to me, the house, the life, the peace. I own it, not just on paper, but in my bones. They may never understand. And that's okay. Understanding was never required. Respect was. And if they couldn't offer that, then they didn't get a key to the world I fought for. This isn't their house. It never was. And as I stood in that sunlight, I finally felt it. I owed them nothing.